We finally have more official information about FromSoftware's upcoming game, the Duskbloods, which was announced a couple of days ago during the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, the Duskbloods will be a PvPvE multiplayer action game, which will be an exclusive FromSoftware title due to be released in 2026 for the Nintendo Switch 2. Today on the official Nintendo website, a creator's voice interview was released with none other than FromSoftware's main man, Hidetaka Miyazaki, and it contains a ton of information that I will go over in this video, so let's dive straight in. At the start of the interview, Miyazaki is asked to give a quick introduction. My name is Hidetaka Miyazaki, I work at FromSoftware and I am the director for the Duskbloods. And as mentioned in my last video, the fact that Miyazaki is indeed the confirmed director for the Duskbloods will be a sigh of relief to many fans. He's then asked, please tell us what led to this title being developed for the Nintendo Switch 2, to which he replies, a while back we had the opportunity to meet with Nintendo to discuss ideas, and during this discussion we presented a rough outline for the Duskbloods. It was still very bare bones at the time, more a loose string of ideas than a proper presentation. The concept itself was different from anything we had done before, and Nintendo seemed very interested in helping making it a reality. So that's when the project kicked off. At first, it was just being worked on by a small team as a title for Nintendo Switch. However, just as the game started to take shape, we were approached by Nintendo with talk of Switch 2, which led us to revamp our development path with this new hardware in mind. The new hardware's focus on online features allowed us to stay as true to the original version as possible, which was very good news for us. This game was in development as a Switch 1 game, and was then moved over to Switch 2 upon Nintendo's request. This does make me wonder as to the scope of this game. If it was Switch 1 originally, will it be relatively small scale? Miyazaki is then asked, it sounds like the game differs from most of your previous titles. Can you give us a little more detail as to what type of game it is? In terms of structure, we consider it a PvPvE title. At its core, it's an online multiplayer focused game, with both player versus player and player versus enemy gameplay. Did you always have some desire to make a PvPvE type game? I've always found the PvPvE structure very interesting. It allows for a broad range of game design ideas, while also letting us leverage our experience of designing challenging enemy encounters. As a side note, please allow me to address one thing. As previously mentioned, this is an online multiplayer title at its core, but this doesn't mean that we as a company have decided to shift to a more multiplayer focused direction with titles going forward. The Nintendo Switch 2 version of Elden Ring was also announced, and we still intend to actively develop single player focused games such as this that embrace our more traditional style. So this right here is great news. With both the announcement for Night Rain and the Duskbloods, there were some concerns that FromSoftware were heading in a direction away from their classic solo player focused formula. But based upon this, they are still very much so cooking other projects in that vein. And these multiplayer projects are them trying a variety of different gaming styles. The interviewer then asked, please tell us about the game's characters and setting. Miyazaki responded with, the game's protagonists or characters controlled by the player are known as Bloodsworn. The Bloodsworn are a group whose members have achieved superhuman abilities through the power of special blood. As a general concept, they're similar to vampires, but they are not portrayed as the horrifying monsters you might associate with traditional vampirism. We tried to extract the sort of romantic aspects we found interesting from concepts such as vampires and blood, and reinterpreted them as the Bloodsworn. In the Duskbloods, the Bloodsworn are competing for something known as First Blood. As human society reaches an end, First Blood flows in an event known as the Twilight of Humanity. The Bloodsworn are summoned to the Twilight of Humanity across a variety of different times and places in a bid to obtain First Blood. Due to this, there is no fixed era or location in which the Duskbloods takes place. There are more traditional Gothic or Victorian style maps, as well as those depicting the closing years of the early modern period, like the one glimpsed in the trailer with the train running through it. So as mentioned in my initial video, I had a lot of uncertainty about what this game was, due to the varying environments that didn't quite seem to fit together in one cohesive theme, and Miyazaki's response here clears that one up, as we will be able to play a variety of different maps throughout this game. He was then asked, can you let us know the meaning behind the title, The Duskbloods? The Duskbloods directly refers to the Bloodsworn themselves. As mentioned earlier, the Bloodsworn are summoned to the Twilight of Humanity in a battle for First Blood. Duskbloods is a collective term for these characters controlled by the player. It sounds like blood plays a pretty big role in the game. Yes, in the context of the game, blood is used more conceptually, as opposed to literal meanings like physical depictions of injury. Blood symbolises one of the game's key themes, the history it holds, the power it passes on, the fates it weaves, and the marker of those who have surpassed the limitations of their own humanity. What are some characteristics of the Bloodsworn? There are several reasons we put the player's focus on the Bloodsworn, with one of those being character actions. The Bloodsworn possesses superhuman abilities thanks to special blood, so the actions are more dramatic than anything seen in our previous titles. Even basic character actions in this game such as sprinting, super jump and double jump are designed to be dynamic and stress-free, and are complemented by each character's own unique weapons and abilities, allowing for a wide range of creativity. Also, and while this isn't directly related to the Bloodsworn themselves, the setting allows for the depiction of firearms and such, and every character is equipped with some means of attacking from a distance. I feel this is one of the game's unique aspects when compared with our previous titles. I hope these new action elements are one area that players will enjoy. So, while we have had both melee and ranged weaponry in previous games, and of course firearms, this does feel like FromSoftware want to try to boost the player's capabilities to handle both combat and movement in a bigger and more over-the-top kind of way. Miyazaki is then asked, earlier you referred to protagonists or characters as plural. Does this mean the player will be able to choose from multiple different characters? He then responds with, yes, there are over a dozen characters for the player to choose from, each with their own identity and appearance. I think there are a lot of unique elements to the character designs and the weapons that they use, so hopefully players can find one or two favourites among them. Also, each character can be customised to a certain extent, allowing the players the fun of building a character that feels like their own. This is making me feel like Duskbloods and Night Rain will have some very similar elements. While yes, Duskbloods does have 12 characters, and I believe Night Rain is 8, Duskbloods will offer the player more ways to actually customise their character, but still by no means to the scale of their classic Souls games. This might make the Duskbloods a good middle ground between Soulsborne and Night Rain. The interviewer then goes on to ask, can you provide some more detail on the general gameplay loop? Miyazaki responds with, the game has a so-called hub area where players can choose their character, customise them and enter online multiplayer. Online multiplayer supports up to 8 players. Upon concluding an online match, players then return to the hub, at which point they receive some sort of reward whether they win or lose. Using these rewards, players can then further customise their character and so the cycle continues. Online matches are generally last player standing, however there are certain cases where victory conditions differ. For example, players may be tasked with teaming up to take down a powerful boss enemy or find themselves in other special circumstances. So victory conditions are influenced not just by PvP results but PvE results as well? That's right, some victory conditions centre around defeating a boss enemy. Well, this is great news. While the game will be heavily PvP, the fact that we can still go toe-to-toe with enemy bosses gives me faith in this project. There's nothing more satisfying than a David and Goliath matchup. The interviewer then says, I can't think of many examples with that rule set, it sounds very interesting. Miyazaki responds with, I'm happy to hear you say that. Regardless of whether it's PvP or PvE, the idea is to provide players with an experience that allows them to learn and hone their skills as they play. We've therefore designed the PvE boss encounters to present a tough challenge and a sense of accomplishment upon defeating them. So players can also enjoy improving their own skills over time as they battle? Yes, although there are a variety of elements in place that keep the game from becoming too stoic, for example, how players conduct themselves during match is just as important as direct combat. The Duskbloods implements victory points, which are responsible for ultimately deciding the outcome of a match. To obtain victory points, direct combat is of course important, but it's not the only way. Some players may prefer to earn points by avoiding direct combat and instead engaging in more opportunistic behaviour. How you earn points is entirely up to you. Additionally, each character can summon an entity to assist in combat, giving players a high degree of freedom when it comes to how they fight and win. Another important aspect is match variables, such as the event system. This system has the potential to alter the course of the match, such as the special enemy spawns and additional objectives with accompanying bonus rewards. In the trailer, you may have noticed a giant stone face looming over the sky. This is one example of the events that can occur in a match. In this case, the appearance of this stone face affects the environment and changes match rewards, which can have an immediate impact on player motivations and objectives. These events don't happen all the time, and I hope discovering them gives players some incentive to keep coming back. So when he says players can summon an entity, I'm assuming this is going to be similar to their current summon system, be it the traditional soul summons or the spirit ashes from Elden Ring. This is another great feature to allow the player to tailor the difficulty of the game to their own skill level. It sounds like even those who tend to shy away from PvP can still enjoy themselves. Miyazaki responds with, that was the intention. I personally am not much of a PvP person, and I wanted to make something that's satisfying even for players like me. While the goal of a match is to obtain first blood, there are personal objectives that provide separate rewards for the player as well, so I hope these add to the fun of each engagement. The interviewer then says, what other ways might players enjoy the game outside of combat? Miyazaki responds with, one thing I love doing in any game I direct is leaving fragments of lore and world building details, allowing the player the fun of using their imagination to make connections. The Duskbloods is no exception to this. However, we've gone about it a little differently from previous titles. The fragments this time are found in the previously mentioned character customization items, their blood history and fate. Customizing a character will reveal a piece of information regarding the world and its unfolding story. So for me, Souls lore has predominantly always been hidden in item descriptions. Yes, we do get some cutscenes, but some of the really interesting stuff is so easily missed. I do hope the Duskbloods doesn't hide everything away like this. While yes, imagination is great, FromSoftware's art and storytelling in a cinematic medium is epic. So I hope the Duskbloods receive some of this too, as it would be a shame to miss out on some vampiric history cutscenes. The interviewer follows up with, you customise their blood history and fate? Miyazaki responds with yes. Analysing and altering a character's blood history and fate allows players to customise all sorts of things, from their abilities, appearance and inner characteristics to the role they play in the world and relationships with other characters. Focusing these elements on the concept of blood or blood history and fate allowed for a deeper exploration of customisation and is another reason we placed the Bloodsworn as the protagonists. Miyazaki is then asked, "Do you mind sharing any other points you personally find interesting?" He says, "One area I haven't talked about yet is roles. In online play, roles give players special responsibilities and objectives that often lead to unique interactions and relationships between players based on their corresponding roles. That's probably not much info to go on, so allow me to provide a few examples, but please note we are still finalising some of the naming and details. So for example, if a player possesses the Destined Rivals role, another player is designated as their rival, and they are tasked with finding and defeating that player. Doing so counts as achieving a personal goal, separate from the overall victory conditions. Another example is Destined Companion, where one player is required to seek out another designated as their companion, which results in a special reward if they form a bond with one another. Roles can be assigned to any character via blood customization, allowing players to enjoy role-playing in a literal sense and hopefully adding to the drama of those engagements. Okay, this is a feature I really like the sound of. Mixed in with the usual game loop, you'll be able to have side tasks, so to speak, whether that be by buddying up and working together or hunting down another specific player. Yeah, I'm all in for this. The interviewer follows up with, kind of like how players can pick their roles in a tabletop RPG. Miyazaki says, "Exactly. While not entirely intentional, it may reflect my own interests a bit. It may seem a little unorthodox at first, but I hope players will give it a try." The interviewer then says, "That reminds me, I was curious about the winged rat character seen in the trailer. Can you provide some details as to what role this character serves?" He then responds with, "That character shares a similar role with the Firekeepers from the Dark Souls series. They remain in the hub area, providing the player with advice and guidance. I suppose you could say we tried doing something a little Nintendo-esque in the spirit of this partnership." What do you mean by that? We tried something cute for a change. Although I will say this character is actually an elderly gentleman. This is classic FromSoftware. What is this strange rat with wings? Oh, that's just the old guy down the road. He's pretty wise. And finally, the interviewer responds with, "Is there anything else you'd like to say before we finish?" And Miyazaki's final note is, "In addition to creating a PvPvE title, we've tried our hand at introducing a lot of new and interesting ideas with the Duskbloods. From superhuman player actions, a freeform combat approach, and gameplay that's dynamic and dramatic to the romanticised aesthetic of the Bloodsworn, deep character customization and fragmentary storytelling. I think there's a lot to appreciate and enjoy in this title, and I sincerely hope that players look forward to it." So overall, Duskbloods sounds like it will be a great game. And as we know, FromSoftware make great games, some of the best in my opinion. That being said, I'm still not sure if this game will be for me, just as much as I'm not sure if Night Rain will be for me. I'm sure I will enjoy them, but multiplayer experiences in my opinion are epic when playing with friends and having that camaraderie or rivalry with people you know. Will I get much enjoyment after several games? Only time will tell. I'm definitely intrigued by it, but I 100% would have preferred this to be a vampiric solo-focused Souls-like. Does that mean Duskbloods is bad? No, it just might not be my cup of tea. Anyway, that's it from me. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Has Miyazaki set your mind at ease? Will Duskbloods be a game you will play again and again? Or will it just be pulled off the gaming shelf for a couple of hours a week with your buddies? Let me know. As always, thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more FromSoftware content.